Deep in the swamp, a war rages between the mutated members of the Brotherhood of Makuta and 3 Toa-Nuva, along with allies from both sides. Battling with elemental energies and strange weapons, those Matorans who have witnessed the fights have dubbed the combatants Mistika, a Matoran word for spirits of the mist. And you can control them with tank controls. To be fair though, most games have a bit of jank to them, and I think the ability to drift more than makes up for that here. Like the Battle for Power Flash games released after, the Mistika game pits the Toa and Makuta against each other in scored objectives. Unlike those games, however, the user's score would not go on to affect a metagame on the LEGO site. The Mistika game is also incredibly short, totaling only 6 short games, though this would have been boosted by the player-created levels available at the time. That's right, this game allowed players to create new levels for both themselves and other players, which would have provided a wealth of replayability to this game. But unfortunately, those levels are no longer available, and we're left with just the base 6. Because of this, and some things I'll talk about later, I don't really think that this game is worth your time anymore, unless you're on a nostalgia bender like I am. I beat the entirety of the game in less than 30 minutes, and I don't think that there's much substance here to go back for more. I think my biggest issue comes from the fact that the games are pretty much all the same, and they're all short. They feel like they were all designed more to show what the players could design with Level Editor than be content in their own right. Starting with character selection, we can choose between 3 Toa and Makuta, each with varying stats. Of these 3 stats though, power, speed, and armor, I really only found speed to be useful, simply because it makes it easier to move around and dodge attacks. Otherwise, just choose which character is your favorite. There isn't any level difference between the Toa and Makuta, only what enemies, basically reskins, you'll face. Once chosen, we're plopped into the level and shown the objective, which for level 1 is to fly around the map and collect 3 things in a time limit. I mentioned before that this game plays with tank controls, with the up and down arrow keys controlling forward momentum and the left and right arrow keys turning us, with spacebar being used for shooting. If it weren't for the fact that our character preserves momentum when changing directions, then I would probably find this control scheme to be pretty atrocious. However, having the ability to drift around corners and enemies is fairly fun, though it does take a bit to get used to. Getting into the level, we find ourselves in a swamp with graphics ripped straight from the original StarCraft. Because of the Mistika setting, every level will have the same environmental details as this one, so get used to it. Each level is essentially designed like a large maze with twisting pathways and sometimes routes and secrets hidden behind destructible terrain. There are plenty of respawning enemies littered throughout that provide danger and add to the player's score when destroyed. Now, each of these levels has a timer or a timed objective like a fleeing enemy, so you don't have much opportunity to look for those secrets, probably in an effort to encourage replayability, as kids would be forced to play the levels over and over to find them all, and then even more times to get them and beat the level within time. For the first level, finding the stones isn't too difficult, and we're able to beat it in the allotted time. The next level is even easier, having to pursue either a Toa or Makuta through the level and shoot them down before they reach the end. Speed is the most useful here, as you can catch up to your target and shoot them down in a matter of seconds, which gives you more breathing room to try and increase your score by hunting other enemies or finding secrets. And the third level plays out almost exactly like the first, except instead of collecting stones, you just need to reach the end of the level. And that's pretty much how the next levels go too, with 4 and 6 recycling objectives from previous levels. The only new one is 5, where we have to attack rocks, which free Matorans, which we then lead back to the beginning of the level. This level is actually somewhat challenging, as we have to guide the Matoran's janky AI carefully to prevent it from getting stuck on walls while dodging its shots and dealing with enemies, all under a time crunch. It was the one time the game actually frustrated me in a good way, as there was actually a challenge to overcome. And honestly, I think that's the biggest problem with the game in its current state. I just don't think the objectives are that engaging. While this might have been debatable for the now defunct user levels, the current objectives are just too simple and don't take full advantage of the game's mechanics. For example, with the timer mechanic. Even with secrets and enemies to kill, most of the objectives are still able to be completed extremely quickly, negating its challenge. I think this was something that was figured out with the later Battle for Power minigames, where the games were still easy, but going for a high score was decently challenging. Again though, I can't be too harsh here because we are literally left with only half a game, and it does feel like these developer-made levels were made to serve as inspiration for the players. It does showcase a sad reality of games preservation. Hundreds or even thousands of levels can just disappear one day. And if it wasn't for the folks at Biomedia Project for hosting this game, we might have lost everything. And that about sums up my thoughts about this game. More than a lot of the other Bionicle Flash games, this one really does feel like an incomplete relic of some bygone era, something we can only see glimpses of but never fully re-experience. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.